Hello, America, and welcome back to another episode of To Hear Me Tell It, the life and times of Jerry Daniels. When you've had your daily dose of today's craziness, dealing with all them Karens out there, ride shotgun with old JD as he goes back and recounts the life and times of growing up in the South during the 60s and 70s. I believe we were called baby boomers. Stories that you will say, yep, I done that, but I ain't gonna tell my kids. And I ain't never told my spouse. But whatever the truth be, it will be this, to hear me tell it. Well, good morning, folks, and welcome to another episode of To Hear Me Tell It. Son, I'm actually, boy, what a new leaf this is. It's probably weather-driven. But today that I'm recording this actually on Tuesday, the 25th of November. I got a feeling it's going to be a busy week, so I'm going to get this out now. So I'll release it today, which is, if you're watching it the first day it comes out, it'll be Wednesday. The 26th is when I release it, but I'm recording it on Tuesday. So, as always, it's appropriate that I say thank you for listening. I do ask that you please like, share, subscribe. If this is a YouTube video you're watching and not the podcast or the Spotify, so if this is YouTube, subscribe to the channel and then like it, and then I ask that you share it. And YouTube I can respond to. So the guys like Mike Snyder and Joe Stitka and a few others, Bob Gherkin I think is one of them as well, is they'll actually make a comment or something like that on YouTube, and I can respond to it. So you give me feedback, and then I can reply to your feedback. And sometimes you may tell me to pack sand, and I may tell you to pack sand, but that's okay. I'm a conservative. I can take it. So anyway, thanks. The surgery recovery. So today officially is 6 days since I've had my gut cut open again. I'm still sore as blazing jimmies, man. I know I've used that word blazing jimmies before. Did a whole podcast about how hot it could be, as hot as blazing jimmies. Well, you can also be as sore as blazing jimmies, and I don't know the difference. I don't know. But I'm sore. I'm sore than blazing jimmies. Damn, all around my navel buttons all bruised and swollen and puffy. Excuse me. Hope I don't start that again. But the good news is I feel better today than I did 3 days ago. That's what my wife always says. She goes, well, do you feel better today? I'm like, well, yeah, I do. But I don't feel great. I'll be happy when I feel great. And I can get back into some sort of exercise routine. Just sitting around and not doing anything is killing me. Now, granted, and I'll give credit to my wife, I've been walking a lot. I mean, I walked anyway, but I've been walking a great deal since the surgery because, as my great friend Joe Stitka says, as motion is lotion. I like that. So I've been doing a lot of walking and stretching and bending back, and that hurts to do that, so I won't do that too much. All right. So thanks to those. Subscribe and like and share, please. I'm not going to talk about a whole lot today. I really want to go hardcore politics. I could go into this deep, but I won't yet. Chickens are doing fine. I got 11 eggs yesterday, and I let them out at least twice a day, and the chickens are so happy. It's not hard to please a chicken. I didn't figure that out. If they're pinned up, let them out. Chickens are chickens. They'll run around and scratch and peck, and they'll destroy everything on the ground. They're good at that. They'll just, the flower beds in the backyard now are completely a disarray, and I'll fix them later, but I'm tired of fixing them every day. So now I just like, okay, I'll go out. They get really bad, but chickens are damn earth movers, man. They move some dirt. Damn. They're excavators. I'm here to tell you, if you want to clear a piece of property, I guess goats and chickens, they'll take care of everything. Anyway, and I take all their chicken poop out of their coop, like every other day or every 3 days. I'll get all their poop out of there, and I put it in my compost. And then I had a big bucket of chicken shit, and I went and pulled all my pepper plants that they're gone now from the winter and all that. So I went and pulled all my pepper plants, and I turned my soil real good, and then I poured a bunch of chicken shit in there, and I turned it again, and then I'll let it sit there and just ferment until spring. So and we'll see how that works out. I don't know. Who knows? I don't profess to be an expert at anything. Jack of all trades, but I'm an expert at nothing. Okay, so that's the deal on the chickens. Laura got stung by a wasp this week, and I heard her when she got stung. She took it pretty good, but now her hand's all swelling and it's itchy. I told her, I said, welcome to my world. She goes, I don't know how you did that. You go out there and get stung sometimes 10 times. I go, I know. You just build a tolerance to it. But she got popped on her thumb pretty good this week. And get this. Oh, excuse me. During the 4 years that I had honeybees, she never got stung. I don't have honeybees, and she got stung by some kind of hornet, a wasp or something. So when the weather gets really cold, we have a snap, and then all of a sudden it warms back up. It's just like ladybugs and wasps and hornets are like, oh my gosh, it's early spring, and they get out and they get all active and whatnot. So anyway, and then Laura said something the other day, and I thought it was funny as shit, but I can't even think of what it is now. So it's a mute issue. Man, I can't remember half the stuff I say. If y'all knew how often I go, ooh, that'd be a good podcast. Ooh, that's a good podcast. I'd have a bunch of them, but I don't write it down, so I don't remember it. So got to make sure I got my mic on, and I do. I'm not hearing myself very good in here. All right. So here's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm not going to talk about that communist Islamic extremist that got elected as the mayor of New York City. Y'all mark my words. I'm serious. You can quote me, write it down. He's going to screw that city up even worse than it. I didn't think it could get any worse, but he's going to make it worse. It's like that idiot in Chicago. But I could talk about that. Or I could talk about that select group of elected representatives. And I'm not sure if they were all senators or congressmen. It doesn't matter. They're elected to serve a number of constituents in a district. Or two state, each state has two senators, but congressional districts. And they're supposed to take an oath to serve the United States Constitution is what they do. But we've got a number of them that are veterans, like that idiot Rubio, Galadio, whatever his name is, that tick turd from damn Arizona. Okay, he was a Marine. Well, good on you, and thank you for your service. You're still an idiot. And then that retired Navy captain. Okay, I'm retired Navy too. Got a lot of respect for a lot of folks that stay in the Navy for the full 20 plus years. But you know what? I served with a lot of folks in the military, different branches and whatnot, and civil service that were true hardcore libtarb liberals, idiots. And that guy's one of them. So, and then there's that other woman. I forget what her name is. I don't even care. But evidently they thought it was, and I would have loved to have been a part of the meeting. I would have loved just like to listen in on the meeting where somebody got the notion and go, hey, I got an idea. Let's get a bunch of liberal veterans that are in the House, and we'll get them to make a video. And you could tell it was all scripted, but we'll make a video, and basically we'll share an opinion. They were careful with their words. You can tell they were getting legal counsel. Not that it was right, but they were getting legal counsel. So, and basically what these idiots did, these are elected representatives. They made a video, said it was their opinion, but here's what it was. We know what it was. I mean, we're not stupid. They were coaching military members, whether they're active, reserves, guard, whatever it is. You question your superiors. Don't you dare do anything that you believe or we believe is illegal. They didn't use the word lawful in any of their little presentations. They're talking now. They realize, yeah, we screwed up. But they use the word legal. You don't have to follow your commanding officer's orders if they're illegal. Well, who decides if they're legal or illegal? Who decides that? So evidently, we have a group of elected representatives that have decided that they decide. And then when they were pressed on it, they all got damn amnesia. They all got damn wishy-washy. Like, well, can you name us one of the things that you say that President Trump and the Department of War, his cabinet, can you name one of the things that they have used the military to enforce, uphold, whatever you want to call it, that is illegal? And they all got, well, I'm not sure. And well, it's kind of an opinion. You're damn right it's subjective. It's opinionated. But here's my humble opinion as a retired Navy veteran. Here's my humble opinion is that these elected representatives should be charged for treason. They should be, because what they did was to incite a military coup. That's what they did. They planted seeds to incite a military coup. Call it what you want to. I don't care. I don't care if you agree with me. I don't care. I'm just telling you what I think. I think they should be charged for treason. I think they should immediately. I think they should be immediately removed from their position in the House. Call it what you want to. Impeached, expelled, whatever, kicked out. That's not an oath to the Constitution. It's not. And they can whitewash it. They can paint it all these different colors. It doesn't matter. A lie is a lie, and a criminal act is a criminal act. They should be charged for treason, taken out of their seats, and then be held account. What they did was morally and ethically wrong on every level. So that's just me. All right. And I find it interesting how that idiot in New York City, Mandami or whatever his name is, yeah, already. I mean, he ain't even been sworn in yet. Already, he's like, I'm just paraphrasing. He's like, well, I thought I could do all that. But no, you can't. And that's going to be the premises of my whole discussion here, because I've been listening to this for years. I've been listening to this for years and years. I even had to listen to it. I say I had to do, but I remember listening to it in the Navy. And there was a time in my Navy career where I think it was Admiral Borda. I think it was Admiral Borda. He committed suicide, but he was an ex-enlisted person, and he made a comment one time, and he came on the ship and he was talking to us, and McPon was with him, and he came down to the chief's mess and was talking to us in the chief's mess on an aircraft carrier, and Admiral Borda made a comment. And this was probably in the early 90s. So I'll just say it was in the early 90s. 92, 93, maybe, I don't know. But he made a comment, and he said one of his goals is to make owning a home affordable for every U.S. Sailor and Marine. That every serviceman and woman should be able to afford to buy a home. And I thought about that, and I thought, man, to be a 4-star admiral and be the guy in charge. I don't think he's thought this through. That's a stupid statement. It was politically correct, but it was a stupid statement. And I'll get back to that. So this whole thing now that's in the news, everybody's talking about it. Find my coffee. But everybody's talking about affordability. Affordability, that's a big word, ain't it? Yep. So I've given this a lot of thought. I did some reading, got my notes over here, and about what is and what is not affordable. So, and I even, let me pull it up here, did some Webster dictionary stuff about what's affordable and what's not affordable. But let's talk about that. And I'm going to start with telling y'all a story. I'll tell y'all a story. Everybody loves a story, right? And we've heard this, especially us that grew up in the South. We've heard this and I'm going to throw out some snippets. So y'all bear with me. Here's one of them. If you have to ask how much it costs, you can't afford it. Is there some truth to that? Think about that. If you're out shopping for something and you go, well, how much is it? And the snooty person says, well, if you got to ask how much is it, you can't afford it. Well, I guess there's some truth to that, but maybe not. Maybe that's not all it's really paid out to be. Years ago, this is in the 60s, in the late 60s, I would frequent the local Western Auto on the square of the courthouse, and my sister and I were talking about the courthouse square the other day, and we got to talking about falling and knocking the breath out of you, because my niece, she fell at school off the monkey bars, fell flat on her back, and knocked the breath out of her, and I guess that's the first time it happened. I think every child in America at one time, sometimes it's going to take two, but they need to experience the whole thing about physics and gravity, and they need to take a tumble, and they need to get the breath knocked out of them to feel what it feels like. Is it comfortable? No. Is it scary? Yeah. Is it valuable? Yep. Every child needs to learn what that feels like, getting the damn wind knocked out of you. So we were talking about that, and my sister said, yeah, you remember around the courthouse square they had those big little white pillars that were about 2 or 3 foot tall, maybe 3 foot tall, and they had those big links of black chain? First of all, I would love to know where they got that black chain. If any historians know where they got the big links of chain to go around the Butler courthouse, I'd love to know where those came from. But anyway, my sister says she was running across there, and she jumped, and she didn't make it. And she fell, and she said, I knocked the wind out of myself. She goes, I felt terrible. I said, yeah, I've been there. I know what it feels like to have your wind knocked out of you. So anyway, the courthouse square in Butler, Georgia, in the late 60s, early 70s, that's my reference point. Man, it was booming, especially on Saturdays, because folks came to town. Folks came to town on Saturdays. And in Butler, Georgia, in that day of time, all the merchants closed on a half day on Thursdays. So at Thursdays at 12 o'clock, everybody closed. Now, and you think about that. I wonder what drove that. And if there's any other historians, Ed Gwynn, you may watch this. You're pretty good at being a historian. But I wonder where that came from. Where did or Nick Giles, maybe you listen to it too. Where did the practice, if you will, where did the practice of closing half day on Thursday come from? I know my mom and daddy loved it, but I also know that there was a lot of us at the grocery store. We didn't get no half day. It just meant you had a half day with no customers. If you was in retail, you was damn recovering and restocking and doing other stuff, cleaning. So that just meant that the customers didn't come in the store. A lot of us still worked. But there was a Western Auto hardware store on the courthouse square. And everybody who grew up and raised in Taylor County, y'all know where it was. And I used to go in there a lot when I was a little boy, because I stayed a lot. My childhood was a lot of time the bus would let me out right there on Main Street and at the grocery store. And I got off, and then I ran in the grocery store and then just got in the way. I say I worked, but I did work. Daddy put my ass to work. He was teaching me stuff. So, but I'd go in the Western Auto, and it had a smell. And if anybody has historical recounts, I guess memories, one of the things, sight, but sound, but smells can just boom, you get a flashback, and you know exactly what it smells like. But there was a very unique odor in the Western Auto store, just like there was a very unique odor in Jimmy Smith's drugstore. There was a very unique odor in Mr. John Pennington's drugstore. We had 2 drugstores on the courthouse square. We had John Pennington's, and we had Jimmy Smith's. They were the 2 druggists. We had John Turk Burger, the Rabbit Box. That was on the courthouse square. We had the dry cleaners. That was kind of on the edge down there, off side of it. We had the laundromat. We had Mr. Harris's barbershop there. These are all around the courthouse square. We had Willis Groceries, little bitty tiny convenient grocery store was on the courthouse square. Mr. Charlie Hart had an auto shop right on the edge corner there, where another grocery store used to be. Man, I can't think of that man's name. Mr. Willis, I guess it was Willis. Yeah, he had like a little bitty tiny thing. He sold some produce and whatnot. Ganed's had one, I think, around the corner. Bee's Beauty Shop. Bee's Beauty Shop was booming, man. That was on the courthouse square. the finance company. I forget the name of it. Jimmy Davison used to work there. Bob Coverhouse, I think, worked there. Something finance. I don't know what it was, but it was right next to our grocery store. It was a little place that people went in there. That was back in the days when you couldn't borrow money from the bank. You couldn't afford to borrow money from the bank. You could afford to go borrow it from, whatever it is, financing. And maybe somebody will chime in and say, oh, I remember the name of that. I forget what it was called. But, and the five and dime store was on, and this is all on one piece, I guess, one street, was the grocery store. Sunny Sports Shop was on there. And then it got up to us, and there was a little alleyway between us and Sunny Sports Shop. And then it was the Butler Red and White. Then it was the, whatever that finance company was. And then, and I'm getting these in wrong order, I'm sure. And then I think there was B's Beauty Salon, and then the Smith's the Smith's Drugstore, Jimmy Smith's Drugstore. And then I think next to that, Edwin Allen and Buck Allen and them had a little hardware and paint store. I think they specialized mostly in paint. But they had that, and then there was a Five and Dime store, and then there was the City Cafe. That was all on one street, y'all. And as a little boy that grew up in Taylor County, let me tell you, I ran and walked miles around this courthouse square. And I knew it like the back of my hand. And if I had $1 for every time I squeezed between these, there was a gap between two buildings, the old Edwards building and the old bank, which I think years later, part of that became the State Farm Insurance Office. But there was a gap between two buildings on the courthouse square, and it was just wide enough for a little dude to get between. And water ran, that was part of the water runoff that went back there to that back alley. Or maybe the back alley water came out, I don't know. But it went into the drainage system. I can't tell y'all how many times I squeezed my ass and sideways and went between these two buildings. I don't even know if I'd fit today. I don't know if that gap's there anymore. I know the alleyway between Sunny Sports Shop and our grocery store, that's gone. They built something there. I think it was a doctor's office or some shit. But all that's gone. All right. So, man, I'm squirreling. I'm sorry. I just wanted to tell you all a little bit. I mean, Christy Dunn, Barrow, she listens to us a lot. Christy, I love you, darling. I hope you're still dealing, I guess is the word, with the loss of our great friend. I mean, I left, and I told folks I left, and my memory of Nancy Reddish was very limited. It was just about 18 years of growing up in Butler, and then I left. But Christy did not, and she and Nancy went on to have a lifelong friendship of 60 years plus. So that's tough. That's tough. So, Christy, I know you're listening to this. So I know we had a lot of fun, and I know there was times, and we had a lot of fun on the courthouse square. And there was a day where our church was doing a fundraiser, and our Sunday school class, but the youth in our church, it was the youth in our church did a fundraiser, and we did, I forget what they called them, but basically you went around all the local businesses and family members and other folks that couldn't look you in your sad eyes and go no. They couldn't tell you no. So you go, will you sponsor me? We're going to do a rockathon, and our goal is to sit in a rocking chair for like 48 hours or some shit. You know what? It was fun, man. It was fun because we actually had all these rocking chairs, and we were under that pavilion thing in front of the old Edwards building. And we would sit out there, and it was just kids. We was just kids, man. No cell phone, no internet, no TV, no politics, no drama, no social media, nothing. We just sat in rocking chairs with blankets over us, and we giggled and with some chaperones, and we ate, and we just rocked. And it was fun. We were building things, building character, and we building morality, I guess. I don't know. Who knows? But anyway, back to the point. All right, so look where I'm at. I'm at 24 minutes. I ain't even got to the damn Western Auto yet. But there was days I would walk in that Western Auto store, And again, I told you about the smells, and I would just marvel at the BB guns and the knives. The BB guns and this is before Barrow Guns was ever into play. It was just Barrow Automotive down over there where next to the Chevron station. But I would walk in there, man, and as a kid, and I don't know if anybody can understand this, or y'all can sympathize, empathize, whatever the word, but you can relate. Because a young person today, I don't think will ever relate to what I'm about to say. Not in America, not today. Maybe not. Maybe in some small town. I don't know. But I can't put the proper words on what it was like to go into a hardware store and marvel and just look at these BB guns. They were so shiny. And look at the knives, man. The case knives, the old timers, the buck knives. And I wanted a buck knife so bad. So bad. And I think as Nick Giles helped me out, because I forgot who owned it back then. It was Wanza Hortman. And I remember I asked Mr. Horton one day. And he's seen me looking at him all the time. But I was eyeballing that, and the glass case was not vertical. It was tilted back at an angle. And all the knives were in there. And I pointed at this folding buck knife, and I asked Mr. Hortman, I said, "Can I see that?" He said, "You're looking at it." I said, "Yeah, but can I hold it?" He said, "You intend to buy it?" I said, "Well, I don't know." He said, "Well, if you don't know if you intend to buy it, the odds are you can't afford it." And he was right. I couldn't afford it. I could not afford it. Let's talk about that, because I want to talk about what affordability is. What does it mean when someone says, "Can you afford it?" And we use that word loosely a lot, afford. But he told me I couldn't afford it. And I'm going to make a note right here. And I'm going to make sure I come back to the story about the knife and how that ended. All right, so a little dictionary here. Afford is a verb. The word afford is a verb. Let me put it over here so at least I'm looking at y'all and down a little bit. But the third person present. Afford, it really means, well, let me hold on, man. Afford, third person, affords, plural, and then afforded, past participle, of course. So number one definition of the verb afford is to have enough money to pay for it. So if we were to say affordability, and then if we were to say what is unaffordability, unaffordability means you ain't got enough money to pay for it. We ain't talking about credit. We ain't talking about that. We ain't talking about that. Can you afford to buy it? I don't have enough money. And like, here's a sentence. The best that I could afford was a first floor room. Well, my wife and I just booked travel to Europe for next year. And here I was on the internet trying to find the best deal for round trip tickets from Atlanta to Athens, Greece. I can't afford business or first class. I can't afford it. But I do have the money to pay for it. So that would stand to reason the first thing I just said, afford, having enough money to pay for it. No, it's having enough money willing to pay for it. I've got enough money to buy them damn tickets first class. I can't afford it. Meaning I can't sustain that kind of deficit immediately from my damn cash, my liquid cash, because I ain't financing a damn trip to go to Athens, Greece. So I cannot afford to buy first class or business class. I can't. So what am I at? I can only afford the economy class. Now, when you shop for airline tickets, it's the economy basic, the economy plus, and the economy premium. It's like, well, what the hell's the difference? Well, one of them is maybe your tickets, like if you bump it up. So from the basic economy up to the third tier of economy, meaning, well, you can afford to buy the ticket and you can afford to go ahead and pay a little bit more because it'll cover the price of checking a bag up to 50 pounds and that you can bring on a carry-on at 25 pounds. Oh, and you get to pick your seat early. You get to pre-select. You get to go online and you get to pick your seat early. Pick where you want to sit. And if you want to pay a little bit more extra, then you can get a little bit extra leg room. So what you see what I'm saying here? What is affordable to one person is not affordable to another person. Now, if I was one of these ritzy, high-class people, this doesn't mean they're bad. If I had let me just rephrase it. Let's go back to me. Focus on me. If I had an ass load of money and just, you know what? My portfolio could withstand Jerry Daniels buying three $13,000 tickets. I could fly luxury. It would be, you'd lay down, you'd sleep. It'd be like you ain't even damn traveled. You wouldn't have no damn jet lag. I've got enough money to pay for that. I do. But I can't afford that. So it's not affordable to me. Know what I'm saying? So back to the definition. Have enough money to pay for it. So the verb afford could mean pay for, bear or meet the expense of, spare the price of, have the money for, to be rich enough for, have a certain amount of something, especially money, available to spare it. It was taking up more time than I could afford. So we use the word afford, not just talk about money, but it could be anything. Health is am I willing to spare my health? My health cannot afford XYZ. My body can't afford. My mental health can't afford. And the like, my job can't afford. My career can't afford. Those type things. Provide a supply. The rooftop terrace affords beautiful views. Means to give. Similar words as provide, supply, present, purvey, make available, offer, blah, 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 blah. All right. So, and here's another, some Webster dictionary stuff, talking about afford. The verb is to be able to manage or bear I like this one. To be able to manage or bear without serious consequences or adverse effect. So I can afford to buy a business first-class ticket to Athens, Greece. Why? Because I don't want to put myself, my family, my wife in a position of liability where we could suffer consequences. Y'all have heard it. If you got to ask for the price, you can't afford it. Well, we've also heard you save for rainy days. And I think there is a significant amount of people in our population who have absolutely no idea what the concept that means. Save for rainy days. You save for rainy days. You put money back. Why? In case you need it. So when people go, well, I can't afford a $2,000 breakdown on my car. Well, seriously? You didn't save enough money for automobile maintenance? We're going to get back to that too. So, all this is in the news, and we know that Mr. Mondami, that socialist communist tick turd, went to go see our president in the White House. And I applaud him for them meeting. I think that's cool. Lincoln met with a lot of people that he didn't like. But they talk about, and now the buzzword in the news is where they both talked about affordability, affordable housing. And, what does that mean, affordable housing? Well, I can tell you what I think it means. It means making homes obtainable. And this is a big problem. I should have kicked it off from the get-go. I'm not an economist. I'm not even remotely, smidgently close to being an economist. So I would venture to say I have no idea what I'm talking about, but I am going to talk about it. So I Googled, is there a connection between poor and immorality? Is there a connection? And here's what the answer is. This is AI shit. So AI said there is a complex and debated relationship between poverty and immorality, with some arguing that poverty is not a moral failing, but a product of circumstances that can lead to immoral behavior. That can. Maybe they said that could. Can means it definitely will. Could means it's subjective and depends on, I guess, the subject matter, but can lead to immoral behavior, while others see systemic poverty as a moral problem itself. Okay, well, I never thought about that. Do I see poverty as a moral as a problem itself? Poverty can create stressful conditions that may, now they use the word may, lead to depression or choices that could be seen immoral. But this is distinct from the idea that poor people are inherently immoral. Conversely, some studies suggest that excessive wealth is linked to a decrease in empathy and an increase into unethical behavior. So I read all that, and Todd Smith will say this because his daddy said it. I never heard James T. say it, but Todd said he said it, and I believe him. But he said that Jimmy Smith used to say, there are more people that steal money on a daily basis in this country who wear three-piece suits and carry a briefcase and work in nice office buildings. I get it. So is poverty, and that's another word. Well, they're poverty. They're stricken with poverty. I believe, and I've said this before, I believe there is a fundamental difference between being poor and being broke. Poor, in my humble opinion, is a condition, and it needs to be temporary, but it is a temporary state, a status where you don't have a lot of resources. I'm poor. Because some people say I'm cash poor, but I'm land rich. Okay, well then they're not really poor. They've got something they can use for collateral, so they're not poor. So being poor means that you don't have a lot. And what you do have, you make do with it. My father's family was poor. They were poor folk. Barefooted, poor. But as my grandma would say, we didn't go hungry. And Aunt Carol would say, cleanliness is next to godliness. And Laura and I used to drive home, that the place we live off Henderson Mountain Road here, we would drive home. We would pass this house trailer every day. She and I would drive this road. And we drove it, I think, a couple of weeks ago when we saw it. And we've been here over 20 years. And when we pass this place, Laura goes, say it. And we pass this same place. It's a single wide. I lived in a single wide. I know what it's like. I was poor, and I lived in a single wide. I mean poor. But I pass this, my wife and I will go down the road, and we'll pass this house trailer, and Laura goes, say it. And I go, and as soon as we get there, she'll laugh, because what I'll say is, you ain't got to have a whole lot of money to clean up your shit and pick up your stuff. You don't have to have a whole lot of money to do that. You do not have to have a whole lot of money to clean your shit. That's the way my daddy was raised and my grandmama was. You didn't have to have a lot of money to stay clean, stay godly, stay organized, take care of what you have. If you're poor, you're in a situation and you do with what you got, you make the best of what you got. You're frugal, you'll squeeze the shit out of a buffalo nickel. And you'll live a life of well below your standards because you're poor, but you're saving money for rainy days. People that are broke, that's a culture. People that are broke stay broke. They're always broke. It doesn't matter whether they're how much money they got, but there are a lot of people that I would consider wealthy or affluent, and they go, "Well, we're broke." I'm like, "Well, you don't have any idea how to live like a poor person." Really? A lot of athletes fall into this, man. They fall into a ton of money, and they call it blank rich, and then in no time they're broke. Somebody will win the lottery. All of a sudden they got a ton of money. Well, in a number of years, they're broke. Why? Because they don't know how to manage what they got, and they lack a moral compass. They lack a sense of decency or respect, and education. They don't have any idea how to manage it. Which leads me to, I know I'm rambling, which leads me to, there was a movie that came out in 1983 with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd and Miss Jamie Lee Curtis. They were the top three, but it's called Trading Places, and they traded places. They made the rich guy become poor or broke. They made him become broke, and then they made the broke dude become affluent and wealthy. And it's funny how they acted, because Dan Aykroyd, who was filthy rich, all of a sudden had nothing. And what did he do? He resorted to crime. His morality went to hell in a handbasket. And the other guy, Eddie Murphy, in that movie, he was all of a sudden in high cotton, man. And remember, he invites all his thug friends, and they come over. And you know what? They don't take care of his shit. And he's walking around with a cigarette butt. Who put the coals out on my rug? He's talking about how much that rug costs and all that kind of stuff. So big difference. Big difference. Being poor and being broke. Jerry Daniels, I've always tried to live below my means. I have. And it's highly subjective, and it's grossly interpretive as to what one person can afford and what another person can't afford. I'll make a comment. Stuart O'Hearn's great for this. I'll say something like, "Man, I can't afford that." He goes, "You can't hide money." I'm like, "Well, no, I just can't afford it." So when I think about what's affordable, it's just, what am I willing to pay for it? What sacrifices sacrifices. What sacrifices I'm willing to make financially to afford to obtain something. We go to the grocery store. My wife and I go to the grocery store. We're frugal, man. Coupons, electronic coupons. I'm serious. You can stick a piece of coal up my butt. It'll be a diamond in 5 minutes. I'm so damn tight. But I'm trying to figure out how I can stretch our dollar to make it so that other things are affordable. I said I've been poor before. Yeah, I have. I was poor, man. Golly, Pete, I was poor. And then there was a point I think I was poor and broke. But I got out of that broke syndrome real fast. But I was poor, living in a single wide. And when they say I didn't have two nickels rubbed together, that's where I learned. I know I taught this before, and I'm not, oh, poor pity for me. But that's where I learned that if you eat mustard and bread sandwiches, that's it, mustard and bread, for days on end, you'll have some serious diarrhea. If you want a laxative, just eat mustard sandwiches. Just mustard sandwiches and drink water. That's it. So my wife and I, we go grocery shopping. We buy name brand stuff. Why? Because we can't afford the other stuff. It's expensive. My wife and I went to buy coffee the other day. Good Lord. A can of damn Folgers coffee was $14. We didn't buy it. I'm like, I can't afford that. Did I have the money? Yeah, but I can't afford that. I'm not willing to pay for that. So it's not affordable to me. And then I Googled, so I talked about, the whole connection between poverty and immoral behavior. Yeah, there's a connection. I read it, but I didn't need to read it. I know for a fact that there is a connection. Okay, I know there is. And then I Googled, has affordability ever been used to separate social classes? And the answer is absolutely. Since the days of time. Since the days of time, affordability separated classes, social classes. Affordability is a significant factor, I'm just reading here, in separating social classes, particularly through housing cost that push lower and middle income families out of desirable neighborhoods. So when there is a neighborhood and somebody says, I want to move into that neighborhood, I want to buy that old house, I want to fix it up. Well, if you're going to buy an old house in a rundown neighborhood, the question is what is your outcome? What's your goal? So these investors will come in, they'll go, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll buy that old house, that dilapidated house, and I'll fix it up and I'll make it real nice. Well, it drives up the tax base for the other people, and then it makes it so they're not affordable. And why don't when people ride around, and you can call it what you want to, but when people ride around, and I bought a lot of homes in my life, and you're shopping, why is it that we, potential home buyer, who is somewhat responsible, we pull down things like crime stats, school outcomes, the production? Why would I buy a house in a neighborhood that has high crime stats? How many times the cops are called there? And just look at the crime statistics, and then turn around and go, oh, and the two nearby schools suck. Well, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go live there. Why? Because I don't want to put me and my family to live there. Why? Because I'm not. So then what takes it goes, well, if you're going to live over here, those houses cost more. Can you afford to live there? Well, the question then is am I willing and can I financially make sacrifices to live there? And in my experience, the answer is I've done that several times. Yep. We'll live below our means. We didn't have cable TV. We didn't have no cell phones. We didn't live the life of luxury. Bought a used van on the internet one time from Oklahoma City and had it brought to my damn house because that's what I could afford. Affordability. What are you willing to pay for it, and what sacrifices are you willing to make? So in today's economy, I'm already at almost 50 minutes, but and I'm going back to about the social class. There are the haves and the have-nots. Why is it that the haves don't want to live next to the have-nots? Why is that? Why? I'll tell you why. It doesn't mean it's good, bad, or indifferent. It means it is what it is. The haves don't want to live near the haves-not because the have-nots are the poverty, and there's a high likelihood that if I buy this house for $500,000 and I pay for it and I make all the sacrifices, I've saved my money, I've done all the sacrificing the years in advance. All my years of life choices have put me in a position where I can afford to make a down payment, and now I'm going to afford to buy a $500,000 home in a nice neighborhood. When I say nice, what does that mean? It doesn't mean white. It doesn't mean it's anything. It means it's probably safe, clean, respectable, pleasant to live in. But if the government gets involved and goes, well, we're going to make the house next door, also valued at $500,000, affordable for somebody else who hasn't done all the things I've done. So they're viewed as a victim who's been oppressed or whatever. But they make it not affordable for them. They just made it obtainable. Affordability is not the same thing as attainability. Making housing, cars, iPhones, whatever it is, making any of that shit more obtainable doesn't make it more affordable. And I used to counsel young sailors who were about to venture into their first home buying experience. Maybe it was a young second class or young first class, got 6, 7, 8, 9 years in the Navy. They're ready to buy their house. They've saved their money. They've done good. I'm like, good. We're going to take you up. We're going to sign you over there with the I mean, I can't even think of, not MWR, the housing office. Anyway, the Fleet and Family Service Center. And we're going to take you over there and get you and your wife signed up in a little bit class about budget making and about buying your first home and whatnot. A lot of them would come back and say, I didn't realize owning a home costs so much. I go, well, sure it is. And this goes back to Admiral Border and his thing, talking about he's going to make it for all sailors can afford a home. No, what Admiral Border was trying to do was make every sailor to be able to obtain a home. You know, and what does it cost? You know, are homes affordable? Apartments are affordable. Why? Because you pay no maintenance fees. Anything happens in that apartment, the water heater goes out, the air conditioner goes out, the stove quits working. You just pay a rent. And you know what? You ain't got no skin in the game. Yep, you ain't got no skin in the game. Now they have contracts, and if you tear the damn place up, but you can't get blood out of a turnip. So, but apartments is you don't pay for any of the upkeep. Anything breaks, you don't pay for it. You own your home, you own your home. You pay for everything. The roof, cleaning the gutters. Oh, and God forbid you have a yard. And trust me, if you own a home in a nice neighborhood and you take care of your yard, you want your neighbor to take care of their yard. Why? Because it impacts the value of your home. I probably told y'all this story before, but one time we bought a house in Chesapeake, Virginia, and it was called, it wasn't the place in Ipswich Village. That wasn't it. We lived in a place called, I forget the damn name of it. Windward Drive, I think it was. Anyway, we lived right next to the Chesapeake City Park, right next to it. And they were single, detached family homes. And I was a Master Chief. And I drove a extremely old used Toyota truck that I bought at a, I think it was at a repo auction at a bank. All right. And my wife didn't work. We homeschooled. So we made a lot of sacrifices to be able to afford to live in this house. And when I was house hunting, a lot of things came into play. Now, we were homeschooling, so schools didn't matter, but the fact that it was next to a nice city park and the fact that it appeared to be a nice neighborhood. And I looked at the crime stats. Y'all, within a year, 2 houses down, our house is shaking from the music. And I know I told y'all this. And I walked down there and knocked on the door, and this lady came to the door. And as soon as the door opened up, she had an attitude. And I couldn't hardly talk to her because the music was so loud. And I was just trying to ask her, could you please turn down your music? And she was screaming at me, no, I ain't got to turn down. And her head starts doing all that bobbing. I ain't got to turn down my damn music. You know, I just turned around and walked off. Not going to wrestle with a pig. I just turned around and walked off and went back to our house and called the law. I said, hey, I got a problem. You know, I went down there, was respectful, asked her to turn the music down. Yep. So, and this guy was a first-class petty officer. He was a gunner's mate that lived down there at that house. And it wasn't 5 minutes. Her husband came walking up the damn sidewalk, came up my driveway. And I could reading his nonverbals. He coming up there wanting to damn argue and fight. So I stopped what I was doing in my garage and I walked out there. I said, what's going on? He said, you come down there and tell my wife cut down the music? I said, no, sir. She said you did. I said, no, I asked her. I didn't tell her. I asked her politely, please, can you lower the volume on my music? We can hear it inside our house. He stands there and starts to lecture me. You know what, motherfucker? I don't live in those apartments no more. And I got my own house. And I can play my damn music as loud as I want. I said, okay, good. And he's got his back to the road, and in my peripheral, I can see the cop car coming down the driveway. He's like, I can play it as loud as I damn want. I said, okay, good deal. And I pointed, I said, I think you need to explain that to him. And the cop pulled up. Go tell him that you can play your music as loud as you damn want. So there I was. I found myself in that position. I made a lot of sacrifices, and I could afford to live there. and I could afford to make life choices and more sacrifices to keep my neighbors on my right side. That was Gil and Daphne Forsyth. Wonderful people. They wanted good neighbors too. And I wanted to be a good neighbor. But this jackleg 2 houses down didn't give a shit about it. Why? Because he had come up from the broke, and now a house became obtainable. This is back when they were loaning money and they were giving everybody money to buy anything. So these houses were becoming obtainable. He couldn't afford to live there. Why? Because he couldn't afford, was not willing to change, but he couldn't afford to make life-altering changes to be a good neighbor. He couldn't afford to do that. So, oh well. Yep. What sacrifices are we willing to make? So now the big thing in the news, I know we're already at almost an hour, y'all, and I'm sorry, but the big main thing to know is health care needs to be affordable. Housing needs to be affordable. Food and water, just food, needs to be affordable. Fuels, gasoline, LP, natural gas, needs to be affordable. Insurance, yeah, it needs to be affordable. And I bet y'all heard me talk about last time. I don't know how much more I can afford. And let me back up right now because I'm going to talk about this. Is Laura and I are shopping for her a new car, not a new. When we say new at my house, that don't mean new. To folks that are broke all the time, new means go finance something. I ain't looking to finance a damn car, but I do want to replace her car. Why? Because hers is 16 going on 17 years old. I'm willing to afford, and we have been making these sacrifices, but I told Laura we were shopping for a new car, and I said, I don't know if we can, I don't think we can buy a new car. Well, what do you mean we can't buy a new car? I don't know if we can afford the new insurance to get something. I mean, she's in a 2010. And it's not a four-wheel drive. It's, it's just matter of fact, her Venza, when I bought it, was classified as a station wagon. And then they quit making Venzas and they brought them back. So now the insurance companies don't classify them as a station wagon anymore. They're classified as a hybrid SUV, some shit, which is a scam. My Venza, when it was come off the assembly line in 2010, was a station wagon. The insurance was dirt cheap. But then they quit making them. Toyota quit making them and importing them into America. And then they brought them back. And they brought them back as a little bit different. And the standards of automobile engineering changed it. So it's not a station wagon anymore. So I get robbed. I get robbed. But Laura and I are looking to buy a new automobile. And I said, I don't think we can afford the insurance, Laura. And I don't. We haven't bought anything. Why? Because I don't know if I can afford that. My damn insurance on my cars go up every frickin' year. But you know what? People that live in housing projects and have no cars, they don't give a damn about insurance. People that are giving stuff, people that are given stuff. So when the health care is given to them, when the housing is given to them, when the food is given to them, they ain't got no skin in the game. Affordability means what does money cost for fake eyelashes, for nails, for iPhones, for all this other kind of stuff. And do y'all remember, I could go on and on, man. Do y'all remember when the iPhones, when mobile phones first came out, it was a status symbol. It was a status symbol. And there was a certain class and culture of people who did not have the money, did not have the credit or the know-how. But anyway, they didn't have cell phones, but they wanted you to believe they had a cell phone because then they could be, it's a status. Yeah. So it's a way of like, I'll fool you into thinking I got a lot of money. So I'll put bling bling on my car. I'll put bling bling on my face. I'll put bling bling on my hands. And then in that day, and when the first mobile phones came out, there were people buying. They were paying for false antennas and put like 2 and 3 and 4 on their car to make people think, man, look at that. Them folks got like 3 or 4 cell phones in their, or mobile phones in their car. And there were people walking around in the malls in the 70s, early 80s. They were in the late 70s, early 80s. I guess it was the 80s, whenever cell phones came out. There were people walking around in amusement parks and walking around in the malls. They didn't have shit, but yet they had fake phone. They would pay for. They were selling them in Spencer's in the mall. You could buy fake cell phones, little flip phones, and hang them on your waist. People did the same thing with pagers to make it look like I'm more than I am. So, yeah. But people that will do that, the other stuff's given to them. So, I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. How do you make health care affordable? And I did a Google right here. What did poor people do before Medicaid and health insurance? They got by. Some folks died, got sick. A lot of bartering. When they say, yeah, your doctor come to your house and heal your sick wounds or whatever it is, and say, well, I'll take your prize pig next slaughter season. How about that? There was a term they would call the bone setters. And that was a person that was skilled in housewives, but that was people that would come and help you. Well, I think my son fell out of a tree. I think he broke his arm. All right, I'll come set it. There was no malpractice. And yeah, there was practicing going on, because how do you learn to set bones? You practice at it. And you look at your hat. Well, I did so-and-so. Little Johnny's didn't work that way. Well, I won't do little Susie's the same way. Why? Because I'm practicing medicine. You ever notice that? They practice law and they practice medicine. I don't know the answer. But I do know this. Giving free stuff away is not the answer. That's called socialism. It's not the answer. Making it free. So then I'm over here. So then I started doing some research, because with our church, I've done a couple of those Habitat for Humanity builds. And I'm already in over an hour. Sorry. But I've done a couple of Habitat for Humanity builds. I don't do it anymore. But I looked at the class. We talked about, social welfare here, but I looked at the class of the people that we were building them for. And I watched them. And then I started driving, going back, looking at the Habitat for Humanity houses 1, 2, and 3 years later. Y'all, they look like shit. Why? Because the people that were able to obtain that house, because you Google it, Habitat for Humanity isn't given to them. No, but it makes it extremely obtainable to someone who could not afford it. They talk about, they do all this training, blah, 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 blah. I'm sure there are some success stories in that. I'm sure there are. And they talk about most of the people that really benefit from Habitat for Humanity go, I feel more dignity. I have more pride. My family and I feel safer. Yep. Ask somebody who's owned a home in a nice neighborhood, and you found out that the empty lot right around your corner next to you has been bought by that group called Habitat Humanity. Their heart's in the right place. And they're going to build and give that house away. Not give it away. They're going to build that and make that house obtainable to a very specific group of people. Ask that people that own those homes in an area if they're okay with that. And the answer is nope. They're not. Why? Because they're concerned. They're concerned about the degradation of the community. They're concerned about crime rate. They're concerned about, will those people keep their house up like all we keep ours? That's the reason HOAs are so damn popular in some areas. I can't stand them, but they're popular. Why? It's a social class thing. If you can't afford to live in a neighborhood and you can't afford to pay for an HOA, there's a reason why they don't want you there. Because there's a likelihood they're going, you're not coming into our neighborhood and going to, in 10, 15, 20 years, this neighborhood will be a slum. And they're not doing it. It becomes a ghetto. And that's how ghettos happen. So, all right, lastly, closing this up. So all this talk about affordability, there's a couple of things being passed around. And one of the things that's in the news is they're actually looking at is a 50-year fixed rate mortgage. Whew. Y'all, that's a long time, man. That is a long time. 50 years for a mortgage? Damn. And the other thing that's being passed around, which I didn't even hear of it until today, is called a portable mortgage. Now, this is unique. I never heard of this. And y'all can do some more reading and studying on it. But a portable mortgage basically means that when you sell your home with a mortgage on it, you got a lien on your house with a financial institution, you basically can buy another house, and then you take what it is maybe you had a down payment, whatever, but you fold the two balances together and you keep the same rate. And maybe you restart like a refinance. So let's say you own a home and you only got 10 years left on a 30-year mortgage, and you owe $100,000. So you started out with a 30-year fixed, and your balance is $100,000, but you got 10 years left. You go over and you buy a new house, and you're able to put down $200,000 on a $500,000 home. So now you got a new balance of $300,000. Then they're going to take your existing balance of $100,000, roll it into that $300,000. So now you got a balance of a new 30-year fixed rate mortgage and at $400,000 at the same rate. And I can see some potential there. They got a lot of stuff got to be worked out, but I could see some potential there. And then I Googled, maybe I have it over here, has houses ever been sold as like on a layaway? I put down a down deposit and then I just make payments toward the buying of the house. I guess that's kind of like what a mortgage is. I don't know. Anyway. All right. So I Googled a lot, and there's a lot on here about affordability, Habitat for Humanity. I'm looking at that. They talked about Habitat Humanity's benefited 3 million people to make houses obtainable. That's the key word, obtainable. So, and I remember reading a book years ago about Red Adair. His name was Paul Neal. Paul Neal at Red Adair was a famous oil firefighter. And in the book that I read, it talked about him being so impoverished, and they were poor. They were not broke. The family he was raised in, his daddy was a blacksmith or something like that. They were dirt poor. He did what he needed to do, but he maintained a sense of morality. And in the book, it was just the author, and I've done some more research. It was not really as true to what this author prescribed it to be or portrayed it to be. But Red Adair was so poor. In the book, it said he contemplating hiding outside of a bar and robbing a man and taking his money. That's not true. He didn't do that. But you know what? There's a lot of people, man, that have been so broke and so poor, they had to make some tough decisions. There's a lot of women who have sold their souls. And a lot of women got into prostitution, think I'll just do it temporarily. There's a lot of people that got into drug dealing, think I'll just do it temporarily. And it's a vicious cycle. So I don't know. I'm not an economist. I'm not a psychologist. Here's the whole thing about, I Googled, can you put a house on a layaway? And and I Googled this. This is interesting. I Googled, people struggle to afford homes due to a combination of factors, including high home prices, elevated mortgage interest rates, and a shortage of available housing. Well, if you're in the business of building houses and the demand has gone down, you quit feeding the supply chain. You're like, well, I'm not building houses. Why can't anybody buy them? Why would I build houses when there's nobody to buy them? And the cost of materials and all the permits and all the other stuff. Houses are expensive. Yeah. And we keep going, well, we need to pay more in labor. Well, it's a vicious cycle. If everything is more expensive, then houses are more expensive. It just keeps, the prices of houses are not going to go down. They're not. And they're trying to figure out, why is it that we have middle income families that are in their late 30s and 40s and they're still not a first time home buyer? I don't know the answer to that, but I will tell you this. I've got a lot of friends. I got a lot of colleagues. I got a lot of associates. I got a lot of fellow members of the chamber. And you know what? I see a lot of folks, and I ain't pointing a finger. I see a lot of folks who say they're broke, and they don't really know what that means, but they'll say they're poor, and they don't know what that means. But I see a lot of people who drive nicer vehicles than me and my wife. They eat out a lot. I can't afford to eat out. I can't afford that. I cannot afford to dump $500, $600, $700, $800, $900 into restaurant costs. Because people say, Jerry, I don't ever see you out eat much. Hell, I can't afford that, man. You serious? But there's a lot of folks, man. I see them eating out a lot. They got the latest, greatest iPhone. They got the toys, the boats, the pontoon boats, the four-wheelers, the side-by-sides, they go on great hunting trips, and all this stuff, man. They got the best cell phone package, the best home internet package, the whatever. I can't afford that. Because you know what? If I did say, you know what, I'm going to get all that stuff, I'd be broke in no time. I'd love to buy plane tickets. I said I was going to make a note, and I said I'd come back to it. Oh, the knife thing. Mr. Wanzer Hortman. I got to come back to that. Anyway, I'd be broke in no time if I tried to do that. And, yeah, I bet the bullet. Bought those plane tickets to Athens, Greece. Economy. We're just going to suck it up. And we'll just do with it. I'd like to do otherwise. I don't have that kind of resources. No, I'm not whining to y'all. I'm not. But I can't afford it. I can't. So, and I can't afford to buy my lovely bride a new car. Why? I don't think I can afford the insurance burden that would come. So, yeah, I've already talked about insurance. I think it's a damn scam. Bottom line is, I saved my money, and I bought that buck knife from Western Auto. It was over a year long. After that, I saved my money, my allowance, picking up bottles, whatever else, doing extra chores, picking up pine cones in people's yards. Well, you loved it when pine cones fall. You knocked on the door. Hey, you want me to pick up all your pine cones for you and rake your pine straw for you and put a little pile under your tree? Yeah, I'll do that for $1. Be out there all day long. Yep. The youth today have no concept of this. But I bought that knife, and I still have it till this day. And I forget who had it. I borrowed it from someone, but they had one of those vibrating guns that had the needle, and you could etch your name in it. I wrote my name in that in the brass on that knife. I still have that knife today. It's got Jerry Daniels engraved in it, and I bought it from the Western Auto, probably about 1970, 71, maybe 72. Yep. All right, y'all. This is the longest podcast I've ever done, and I sincerely apologize. Christy, hang in there. Mike Posey, you hang in there, brother. And as a fellow conservative, we need to be cautious of the people that are selling the snake oil, and they're trying to convince all these people that, we'll make it affordable. We'll make it affordable. Yeah. Bicycle. Power starting to flicker.